Of course, a lot of headway made when it comes to the DRC regulatory environment changing quite rapidly. What is the most significant change that you've seen of late that has prompted more interest in this war-torn country?
Well, I guess what we've seen of late is, over the last couple of years, is that there's been a couple of positive signs in terms of legal developments and reforms. We've seen a new constitution, we've seen a new mining code in 2002, we've seen a new investment code in 2002 and a single-stop shop investment center also in 2003. But also quite recently, and now actually lying in parliament, is a new environmental code. There is also an oil code. But probably the most important development in the DRC, and a very positive signal, strong signal towards investors, is the fact that the DRC will become a party to the OHADA. The OHADA, which is the Organization for Harmonization of Business Laws in Africa, which currently counts about 16 member states, and which has a set of uniform acts going from Companies Act up to general commercial law, secured lending, arbitration, which become directly applicable in a country. Now the DRC is set to ratify and to become part of OHADA early next year.
So you're talking about new codes coming to the fore and a lot of changes happening on the legal front, regulatory front. The question is, how are these new codes implemented? Are we seeing them being ratified correctly?
Yes, well, I think that's one of the impediments at this stage, and it's also something that the World Bank and the IMF have underlined recently in certain reports, is that creating the environment is one thing, but you need to support it by supervision and by good governance. But also at that stage, I would say that although there are certain challenges, the DRC is ranked the second last by the Doing Business report of the World Bank for 2010. So there are certainly certain challenges which need to be underlined. But this being said, also in terms of transparency, governance, there are certain positive signs. For example, in the mining sector, there's a new project which has recently been launched, which is the project for governance in the mining sector, which exactly is aimed at the support, sustaining the different supervision authorities and things like that. So there's certain signs that are certainly positive.
Well, let's zoom into the mining codes. We also hear a lot of news about suspension of mining operations, which of course has also deterred some foreign investors, and we also see mineral rights also being under speculation at this point in time. Pretty much a similar picture that is also being played out in South Africa, and that is definitely something that could scare foreign investors away. So mining contracts being reviewed. What is being done for the mining industry, for the foreign investors, for the people that are creating the exploration strategies, that they will be protected down the line?
Well, again, there is a mining code of 2002, which is an application and which is in accordance with best practices. I think the mining review that the DRC has gone through has certainly put certain impediments and has been less attractive for investors in the country. But I think the review was something DRC had to go to, given its history. If you look at the mining sector in DRC, it has a very long history. You had the Mobutu time frame, then you had the early 90s under Mobutu, whereby there was a really lack of government. Then you had the two wars in the DRC, during which mining rights have been given throughout the country. So the review process was certainly something that had to be done.
And of course, government has a very big stake in the mining industry at this point.
The government has certainly a big stake, and I think that's quite typical for the DRC mining sector, and that's also historically, is that a lot of the big mining concessions are in hands of parastatals, such as GCAMIN and MIBA, that then enter into contracts with international investors.
Of course, a lot of countries operate in the DRC. South African companies operate there, Belgian, and of course Canadian companies of late. More interest coming through from the Chinese and of course from India as well. And it seems that they are far more used to tougher regulatory environments, and this is why we're seeing far more interest. Who do you see going forward being the biggest player in the DRC?
Well, I think what you certainly see is obviously a big Chinese interest in the country, also a big Asian interest in general. Koreans have recently taken investments, but also I think a couple of weeks ago it was announced that Somi Kivu, which is a very important mining parastatal in the Kivu, has sold certain shares to, well, that a Russian company has taken investment in the Somi Kivu. So it seems that your interest comes from a bit all over the world. But I think it's certainly a fact to be said that Asian investment into DRC is ongoing, and Chinese investors are probably becoming the prime investors in the country.